All right, let's talk about what might be the single most critical skill in any job today: communication. And I don't just mean, being a smooth talker. I'm talking about communication as a precision tool, something you can use to actually get things done, build really strong teams, and honestly, to push your own career forward. So let's dive in. I mean, just think about it for a second. How much time have you lost this week because of a misunderstood email? Or, those super vague instructions? Or my favorite, a meeting that just goes absolutely nowhere. It's way more than just annoying, right? Bad communication, it leads straight to missed deadlines, wasted work, and just a total drain on morale. It is the silent productivity killer lurking in pretty much every office. Okay, so here's our game plan for the next few minutes. First, we're going to cover why communication is so important. Then, we'll open up your modern toolkit and see how to pick the right channel for the right situation. We'll also look at the common roadblocks that trip us all up. And finally, the best part, we'll build your very own communication playbook. Sound good? All right, first things first. Why do we need to care so much about this? I mean, really? Well, because communication isn't some fluffy, soft skill. Nope. It's the absolute foundation, the bedrock of everything that happens in a thriving workplace. So at its most basic level, communication is just this. It's the process of getting information from one person to another. But here's the kicker, and this is the most important part: making sure that information is actually understood. Sounds simple, right? But yeah, we all know that's where things can get real messy real fast. And this simple process, it's literally the engine for everything else we do at work. It's how we coordinate what our teams are doing. It's how we share information so we can make better, smarter decisions. It's how we influence people and lead effectively. And, on a human level, it's what builds a great company culture and genuinely supports everyone's well-being. Okay, so we've established it's a really big deal. Now we need to understand how it all actually works. So let's open up this modern communication toolkit of ours and take a look at the nuts and bolts. So this model, it's a classic for a reason. It breaks it down so simply. You, the sender, you have an idea in your head. You have to encode it into words, spoken, written, whatever. Then you send it. On the other end, the receiver has to decode all those words back into an idea. But look, smack dab in the middle of this whole process is the one thing that messes everything up: noise. And noise isn't just, a loud fan or construction outside. It's anything that gets in the way of understanding. It could be jargon that the other person doesn't get. It could be a super ambiguous email. It could even be that the person you're talking to is just stressed out and distracted, so they can't fully hear you. This noise is the enemy we are constantly trying to defeat. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Look at how the channels we use to fight that noise have completely changed. I mean, check out the explosion in chat and messaging. Just a decade ago, that was a tiny little sliver. And now, for many of us, it's a massive part of our day, sometimes even bigger than email. This massive shift to digital-first communication, well, it brings a whole new set of challenges. Yeah, and that shift is a total double-edged sword. On the one hand, digital channels are awesome, right? They're fast, you can talk to someone asynchronously, and you have a searchable record of everything. But on the other hand, they are terrible at conveying emotion. And that leads to all sorts of misunderstandings, can sometimes feel kind of disrespectful, and of course, it creates that feeling of just constant information overload that I'm sure we all know and love. So what do we do about it? How do we put that human element, that emotional context, back into our digital messages? Think about a simple message like, "Great job on the report." That's a perfect example. What does that even mean? Is the person being sincere? Are they being sarcastic? Are they just, checking a box? The words by themselves, they just don't tell us enough. But what happens if you add a simple thumbs up or a smiley face? Suddenly, the intent is crystal clear. It's positive. Emojis have basically become our new digital body language. They're these little nonverbal cues that are absolutely essential for clarifying what we mean, sending a bit of positive emotion, and honestly, just making our working relationships online a whole lot better. Okay, so we've got our toolkit, right? We have email, we have chat, we have video calls. The real skill now is knowing which tool to pull out of the box and when. And that means we need to get a little more strategic. And the key idea here is something called media richness. Now just think of it like this. How much information can a channel actually carry? So a face-to-face chat is super rich. You get the words, the tone of voice, body language, you get feedback right away. On the other end of the spectrum, something like a financial report is very lean. It's just the raw data. So this hierarchy you see here, this is your guide. This is how you make the right choice. The big secret is to match the richness of the channel to how complex your message is. If you've got a tricky, ambiguous problem to sort out, you need a rich channel, like a video call. Trying to solve it over email, that's just oversimplifying and it's going to fail. On the flip side, jumping on a video call for a simple, routine update, that's total overkill. That's how you end up in that overloaded zone. But here's the thing. Even if you pick the perfect channel, stuff can still go wrong. So let's talk about the common roadblocks that pop up for all of us. Think of it like a communication obstacle course that we have to run every single day. And these right here are some of the biggest offenders. You've got information overload. We've talked about that one, just being totally swamped. Then there's jargon, using those technical terms that just leave people out. There's filtering. That's when people only tell you the good parts of a story to make themselves look better. And of course, a huge one, cross-cultural differences, where the exact same words can have totally different meanings. Let's just double-click on information overload for a second, because I think we can all relate to this one. When your brain is getting hit with more emails, more Slacks, more reports than it can possibly handle, you don't just get stressed out. You actually start missing important details. You start skimming instead of actually reading, and you start misinterpreting things. It's a surefire way to make mistakes. All right, we've defined the problem, we've looked at the tools, we've identified the roadblocks. Now it's time for the payoff. Let's build your personal playbook with some super simple, super effective strategies so you can start winning at workplace communication. So when you're the one sending the message, these 4 rules are pure gold. First, empathize. Just stop and think, what does my audience already know? What do they need to know? Second, repeat yourself. Say the important thing in the meeting, and then say it again in the follow-up email. Third, get your timing right. We all know this one. Don't send a huge request at 4:55 on a Friday. And finally, be descriptive, not judgmental. Say, hey, the sales data was missing from this report, not, wow, this report is sloppy. But sending messages is only half the equation. Great communication is a two-way street, which means we have to talk about what might be the most powerful and honestly the most underrated skill in this entire playbook, and that is active listening. And listen, active listening is not passive. It's not just about sitting there and being quiet while someone else talks. No, it's a dynamic, continuous cycle. It's about sensing what's being said, really evaluating that information, and then responding in a way that proves you're actually engaged. Let's break that down into 3 steps you can actually use. Step 1 is sensing. That means you focus on the speaker. You don't interrupt, and you hold back your own judgment for a minute. Step 2 is evaluating. Try to see it from their perspective, empathize a little, and organize what they're saying in your head. And then step 3, responding. This is where you show you're listening. You nod, you make eye contact, but most importantly, you ask questions to clarify and you paraphrase what you heard back to them to make sure you got it right. Whew, we've covered a lot of ground here, from media richness all the way to active listening. But you know what? All this knowledge is totally useless if you don't do something with it. So I have one last question, and this one's for you. Thinking about your own habits, what is the one single thing? Maybe it's choosing a richer channel for that next tough conversation, or maybe it's just practicing that first sensing step of active listening. What's the one thing you're going to change starting today to build your own playbook for success?